What you saw that scared you. You did not arrive at your skepticism from nowhere. Nobody wakes up one morning, unbothered and neutral, and randomly decides that marriage is a flawed institution not worth pursuing. That conclusion, however confidently held, however eloquently defended on a Twitter thread or a late-night conversation with friends, almost always has an origin story. And that origin story, more often than not, did not begin with a podcast or an influencer or a sociology lecture. It began much earlier, in a house, with people you loved, watching something fall apart that was supposed to hold together. Before the internet gave your skepticism a language, life gave it a reason. This chapter is about that reason. Not to exploit it, not to dismiss it, and certainly not to minimize the very real pain that sits behind it. But because a wound you have not examined is a wound that continues to make decisions on your behalf, quietly, consistently, often without your awareness. And in no area of life is an unexamined wound more expensive than in the area of love. The house you grew up in. Think for a moment about the first marriage you ever observed up close, not the ones on television, not the celebrity couple on the magazine cover at the salon, the real one, the one that happened in your own home or in the home of a relative so close they might as well have been family. The one whose arguments you heard through walls you pretended were thicker than they were. The one whose tension you felt at the dinner table before anyone said a word. That particular quality of silence that children learn to read long before they learn to read text. For many young Africans reading this book, that first marriage was not a picture of warmth and partnership. It was something considerably more complicated. It may have been a father who came home transformed by alcohol into someone his daytime self would not recognize. A mother who cried in the kitchen after she thought everyone was asleep, the sound muffled but not muffled enough. Parents who stayed together in the same house but lived in entirely separate emotional universes, sharing a roof and a surname, and absolutely nothing else that resembled intimacy. A home where shouting was the primary language and silence was not peace, but simply the ceasefire between two people who had run out of energy to fight. Or perhaps it was something more dramatic. A father who left and never fully returned. Physically present on occasional weekends. Emotionally absent in the ways that count. A mother who was so worn down by the labor of holding everything together alone that her tenderness ran out before the day did. An uncle whose wife everyone whispered about. An aunt whose husband everyone pitied. A cousin's parents who fought so violently that the neighbors knew the schedule of it. Some of you grew up in homes where the marriage did not survive at all, where divorce or separation arrived and rearranged everything, splitting your world into two halves that never quite fit back together, forcing you to carry the particular exhaustion of children who love both their parents and are quietly destroyed by watching those parents destroy each other. You saw all of this. You were small, and you saw everything. Children are witnesses who never forget. Here is something developmental psychology has documented extensively, something therapists know intimately, and something your own body has probably already confirmed without needing a clinical study to explain it. Children are extraordinarily perceptive observers of adult emotional life, and what they observe becomes encoded not just as memory, but as expectation. The human brain in its early years is essentially a pattern recognition machine. It is designed to study its environment obsessively, extract rules from what it observes, and use those rules to build predictions about how the world works. This is not a flaw. It is survival architecture. A child who learns quickly that a certain tone of voice precedes danger is a child who can protect themselves. A child who reads the emotional temperature of a room accurately is a child who knows when to make themselves small. But the same mechanism that protects a child in the short term can quietly imprison them in the long term. When the primary marriage you observed as a child was characterized by cruelty, neglect, volatility, or quiet despair, your brain did not simply file it under bad experience. It filed it under this is what marriage is, not consciously necessarily, not in words you could have articulated at 7 or 9 or 12 years old, but in the wordless, pre-verbal architecture of expectation that gets built in those early years and then operates largely below the level of conscious thought for the rest of your life. This is why so many intelligent, self-aware adults People who can analyze systems, articulate ideas fluently, and make sophisticated decisions in their professional lives find themselves inexplicably terrified of commitment, inexplicably allergic to vulnerability, inexplicably drawn to relationships that replicate, in updated costume, the dynamics they spent their childhood watching and dreading. The intellect knows better. The nervous system has different instructions, and the nervous system, in matters of love, tends to win. Dr. John Bowlby, the British psychiatrist whose attachment theory transformed our understanding of human development, spent decades documenting precisely this phenomenon, the way early relational experiences create what he called internal working models, essentially mental blueprints of what relationships are, how they work, who we are within them, and whether they are safe. Those blueprints, formed in childhood, become the lens through which all subsequent relationships are filtered, evaluated, and often unconsciously recreated. If the blueprint you were handed showed you that love equals pain, commitment equals trap, and marriage equals the slow erosion of two people who once cared about each other, then that blueprint is still operating, right now, today, in the way you respond when someone gets too close, in the walls you build before anyone asks you to, in the exit strategies you plan before you have even properly arrived.